Hello everyone, welcome to the EASL Studio, your weekly hepatology broadcast. In today's live episodes, we'll discuss how you can maximize your chances of publication in JHEP Reports. We have a number of discussants closely involved in the journal. First, the editor-in-chief, Josep Llovet, then a co-editor, Virginia Hernández-Gea, Tobias Böttler, an associate editor, and myself, also an associate editor. We are very much looking forward, and what you will all be curious about for the start is what values JHEP reports the most. So is it novelty, is it rigor, or is it clarity and transparency in the reporting? Josep, could you allude to this?
Thank you very much, Mattias, and thank you all of the attendees for being engaged in this studio. Yeah, our journal is intended to receive original articles that have some of the qualities that you mentioned. First one will be novelty. So novelty is very important for us because sometimes novelty doesn't come with very, very robust statistical power, but nonetheless is the first report in something or the first technique, cutting-edge technology, or the phase 1 study. So we prize a lot novelty in research in liver disease. The second will be quality, despite the fact that we understand that where we stand in hepatology and liver diseases, but we prize quality also, even if it is a report that is not very, as I mentioned, ambitious in terms of number of patients, but is ambitious on the rigor of the methodology and a clear message. So clarity is also very important for us, to be very straightforward, very clear, going to the point. We like that very much. Of course, we pay attention to hot areas. As you know, science sometimes goes and comes and goes in some areas, and we are paying a lot of attention hot areas, liver disease, or novel areas that physicians and scientists might be interested. So these are more or less our values and what we prize a lot in our journal.
And if you had the first look at the manuscript, how or what proportion of patients will be assigned to an associate editor and what happens after that?
So the way we work is as follows. So when we receive a paper, there is first an allocation to the corresponding editor. As you know, there are 5 editors. Tobias Forms is dealing with hepatitis, with liver transplantation, immune disease, or rare disease. Jacob George is dealing with MASLD mostly. Virginia Hernández-Gea is dealing with cirrhosis and complications. Anne Vogel, liver tumors. And then Sophie Wattenstadt is dealing with ASIMs. So then the team, the office is allocating the papers to them. And then they decide, is this strong enough to move ahead, to have a chance in the setting of a review? If this is the case, then they allocate that kind of associated. If they think that the paper is not good enough for our journal, there is the process of in-house rejection. And then at the end, the associate editor also has the capacity to have an in-house rejection as well, or pass that to reviewers. And this is how the flow goes. Then the flow at the end goes backwards, in a sense that with the associate editor taking a decision, the co-editor should be aligned with that. And then at the end, I'm having a final watch. I'm not changing, of course, the decisions that are taken, at least in 99% of the cases. But I have a watch on title. I like the abstract to be clear, and also the graphic abstract that I think in JHEP Reports is very appealing, to be sound and should be self-explanatory. So if someone is jumping to the graphic abstract, you should understand what is the paper about, what is the main message, the main methods, and the main results. And I am asking myself, because I'm expert in a very special area, so I'm able to understand what's going on with the graphic abstract. If this is enough, then it's okay. Otherwise, we try to refine, fine-tune the graphic abstract to be appealing enough. This is the process.
Yeah, so here I want... Yeah, here I want to comment, Mattias, how important is clarity, right? So when you receive the paper, it's like we are all human beings. So you receive the paper and you need to understand what is it about. So if I'm receiving a paper, sometimes I'm not like super familiar with the topic, even if it's in my area of expertise. So if I go through the abstracts, everything is clear, I can understand the message. I do particularly like the cover letter, where sometimes the author in a few sentences can like clearly direct your attention toward what is new. Is this a new concept? Is a new technology? Is like bringing more evidence on something, and then you get an idea. And this is for me like the first thing. So clarity here, it's perfect. Now other things enter into the game, and then, well, what do we know of the topic? This is already known. Well, maybe this is not something that I would like to take. I would like to take something that is completely new. Of course, methodology is always important, because if you have like something very novel, but it's not supported by the data that you are providing, then that's the end, right? So those are the things that will make me decide if I'm keeping this paper in the loop or if I go directly to early rejection, in-house rejection.
And what's the rate of in-house rejection? Possibly some will...
It's around between 65 and 70% at this point.
And is there a difference between different topical areas?
Well, there are some associates that are tougher than the others, but we try to have this balance throughout. But certainly there are some associates that are tougher. No, what I wanted to say, following what Virginia mentioned, is that sometimes, I mean, for junior investigators, they want to be very ambitious. They want to cover a lot of things. And my message is, sometimes if you hit only one thing and you have one message, it's a clean message, clear message, it will suffice to have your paper accepted. Don't try to cover a lot, but just have one clear question and answer this question the best as you can. I think that this will suffice. Also, I have to praise our reviewers. I mean, they are doing an outstanding job, and I think that the feedback that the authors are receiving is very good. So we have yearly around 1,500 submissions, and among those, as I mentioned, 70% of in-house rejection. This means that close to 400 papers go to a review, right? So this is a huge effort. It's an Herculean effort. It sometimes gets difficult to have reviewers. We have a roster of young reviewers as well. We try to balance that. So 50% of our editorial board is senior and 50% is junior, and we like to have that balance also on an individual basis and try to balance that. So I think that the feedback from some of the authors, at least what I receive, is that they learn a lot and they were able to improve the paper with the feedback, which is important.
Yeah, I think that also, Mattias, this is an important message for the young people out there. Is like, don't think that the reviewer is like, I don't know, someone strange that will destroy your paper. So reviewer can be you sometimes. So it's like normal people working in the field like you are. So the important thing is like trying to target the attention to your colleagues that sometimes are not like very completely super specific in the topic. Of course, they will be experts in the area, but it's like trying to make yourself understood and bring on value and put into context your research. And most of the time the reviewers, they come with things that improve, or with the final aim of improving your manuscript at the end.
And I think if we're talking about younger people and experiences with the journals and reviews, I think what we also find is that some of the younger people, they don't feel to be ready to be reviewers themselves. So they tend to decline review requests that we send out. And I think this is also a very critical point for them to understand that actually you learn a lot by reviewing papers yourself, right? So this is basically you're being a better author in the long run if you're learning how to write proper reviews. And so I think this is also very good training, and you get to know the field, and obviously we learn the names, and if they accept reviews, that's always very good.
So, and how do we select reviewers? Are you relying on the suggestions in the cover letter if provided, or are you completely ignoring them if possible? So what are your preferences?
We don't ignore anything. I mean, no, I think, I mean, they can speak more freely about that, but I would say that it's a balance. So what they suggest, it's taken into account. Also, I think each associate editor and co-editor have a roster of reviewers that can rely on, because sometimes you have very good people, but very busy people. So it's very difficult to get them engaged, whereas others are more responsive to the queries that we're asking them. And then I think what Tobias was saying is very true. If you receive an invitation, you're a young investigator, and you receive an invitation to review, try to accept that. This means the associate and the co-editor trust you. And then nonetheless, the final decision will be balanced by a lot of factors. The other reviewers, the opinion of the associate, the opinion of the co-editor. So it will be a balanced decision, but at least we want to listen to your voice as well.
And by the way, there's not too many people that actually suggest reviewers, in my experience, right? So the majority of papers, they don't even have any suggestions for reviewers, at least in the areas that I cover. So, and if they do, that doesn't mean that those reviewers will actually also accept to review. So I think that's also something that we have to keep in mind, although I think we really cannot complain. Acceptance rate for reviews, I think, is for an EASL journal still pretty strong. So we really cannot complain for that. But also, so what I actually usually try is if there's several recommendations, I tend to take one of them, but I also always try to find somebody that is not specifically listed in the submission.
Yes,
and sometimes, I mean, it's not that the reviewers that you are suggesting are gonna be the more kind with you, because sometimes like you put names there, and then when you see the reviewers, it's like, wow, oh my God, maybe you have known. So I guess that when you are like publishing something that is very specific, you know, in a niche, in a very small niche, it's nice to suggest, like, of course, in an unbiased manner, if we see that you are, because at the end, it's like more or less, we know a lot of people. So if you're like just putting your friends, it's not gonna work, right? And it doesn't say a lot from you. But if you're trying to be fair and you suggest reviewers because you know that this particular paper is like very specific in a topic, can be helpful. In my case, I think that we all rely a lot in the list of people that we have in the journal, and here we have a lot of young people that they do amazing reviews. So I think in this particular term we are in very good shape, and we have very young critical mass contributing a lot to the journal.
I want to add here also, for those of you that are thinking to submit your paper to JHEP Reports, that at least for the first part of the decision making, we're very fast. So from submission to first decision, considering as a whole, is 4 days. Of course, there is the in-house rejection, but if you pass the threshold and your paper is sent to reviewers, at the end, from first submission to the first decision after review is 30 days. So in 30 days, you will receive a decision, which I think it's a very good time frame and it's fair. So you are submitting the paper here. In 1 month, you will know, okay, paper has been rejected. You will know that in 4 days or less. But if the paper has been considered, then you will have a final decision that could be accepted with minor comments or major comments on the end reject in 1 month, which is very encouraging. And also speaks for the very good job of the editorial team and the reviewers as well.
So then if it comes to an invitation to resubmit a revised manuscript, what would be the red flags, things that should be definitely avoided? Do you have tips how to deal with reviewers where it is very hard to meet all the requirements?
Sometimes we realize that it's very hard on front, right? When you go through the revisions, then you can detect, sometimes you can manage, and sometimes you get the reviewers, but you get a comment from the editor, like trying to tell, or directing you towards the important topic. It's like, please make sure that this and this and this is addressed, right? Because sometimes you have like a very clear view that without a couple of things, the paper is not gonna make it. And then you try to help a little bit the reviewers to be focused. And then sometimes I guess that if you explain as an author, if you explain that whatever they are asking you, you cannot provide, and the reason why you cannot provide it, then it can also, we do not ask for 100% things to be addressed, but of course the majority of them and the important ones mainly.
I think that the co-editors sometimes make it quite clear. Of course there may be a list. It's a realistic list, so we know what type of journal we are. So it's not something, we're not submitting a paper to New England or Nature, right? So it's a realistic list, but also I would say that there are 1 or 2 points that need to be addressed clearly, and sometimes the co-editors or the associate editors are very straightforward with that. You need to address these and these, particularly when sometimes there is one submission and then still a second submission, and still the decision is not taken because probably the message has not been there. If you are able to address this, the paper will be accepted. There is always other details, but if there is something unrealistic coming from a reviewer, that this may happen, so the associate to the co-editor may point this out, or even the authors addressing all the other points and saying, look, if you are asking me for this external validation with a very complex core or a new animal model, I'm sorry, but this will take a long period of time and it's a huge effort, but we have been able to address all the other points that we think that have improved the paper. I think that this resonates a lot with our decision making in a positive direction.
And always keep the reviewers happy, right? I think that's also a very important comment for authors. These are the reviewers usually spend their free time writing these reviews, and then when they get a resubmission, they really want to see that their points are being valued, that they bring, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, like Josep said, make a new mouse model, right? That's not realistic, but you can always find proper ways to discuss these things, and I think that's the most important part. Don't be too optimistic that the paper's coming through anyway, even if you just discuss the specific comments. So I think that's also an important aspect.
And one thing that we have to keep in mind is also this psychological side that you mentioned. So what you expect as a reviewer is something that is easy to comprehend and that is well presented, that also has a certain language level. So Tobias, can AI help us with improving the presentation of the manuscript? And when would it go too far?
Well, so I think common sense here dictates what you have to do, right? So of course, if you have the feeling, and I do that myself, that you want to express a certain thing and you don't find the proper words, you can use AI for that. I think helping you with the ways that you put some sentence, or that you want to bring a specific fact to a certain conclusion, this is where AI, I think, can assist you in writing your paper. I think that's a very important point and a difference. So when we're talking about an author, then you might use that for these purposes, and also for ways to find, I don't know, good titles, for example. You say, well, I'm writing a paper and it's about this and this and this and this and this. Can you give me an idea on what could be the title, for example, right? So I think for these things, to get some input, that makes sense. But I think that's pretty much already the end in what AI should assist you with.
I want to pitch here, not about AI, I can comment on that, but also about what Mattias was saying. So the title is very important and the abstract. So for me, I mean, the title, if you have an appealing title, an abstract, of course, supporting the claim of the title, I mean, you are half there. Of course, you need to have solid data, but not very comprehensive data. It's the concept of novelty I mentioned before, that sometimes, I mean, the data is not strong enough. And in a few papers, I have received a comment, okay, this paper has not a very strong cohort. Okay, well, but the concept was novel, was well described, and it was explained in a very appealing way, and is adding value to the field. So then we are more inclined to accept this type of papers. But you have an appealing title, an appealing abstract, so pay attention to your abstract. I think it's very important, because this is the main entrance for the editors and the editorial team, and for the reviewers. If they clearly understand what's going on, sometimes there are papers submitted that the title, I don't recognize the disease. I mean, what? So what are we talking about? So of course, some biological process can happen, but sometimes they try to address a concept about the disease that is not in the title. I mean, this cannot be, right? So this common sense thing, I think it's very important. Regarding specifically AI, I mean, I don't want to scare anybody, but we have a tool that helps us to figure out if you use AI, as Tobias, was saying, just to help you to process some of your thoughts in a nice manner, rather than to write your paper. This is unacceptable for us and for all the journals at this point. But it's not that, so AI is necessary and will be very, very needed globally. So also we are accepting that you are using AI to fine-tuning some sentences, and this is a different concept than using AI to write your paper.
So one thing that very commonly occurs in the last times is that we have a further round of revisions after provisional acceptance to fine-tune the abstract, and particularly graphical abstract. So I see a lot of variability in what we are receiving in graphical abstracts, and everything in the end ends up at your desk, Josep.
Yes.
Could you comment a little bit about what you would like to see there?
This is one of my obsessions personally. I think that the title, abstract, and graphic abstract should be very clear. And as I mentioned, the graphic abstract, I think, is a very good added value to the originals. Now we are including graphic abstract even for the reviews, because sometimes in conferences, physicians and scientists are using the graphic abstract to summarize the paper. So then you need to think about, if you're an author, how you can sell your concept, your novelty, your findings in a graphic abstract that is self-explanatory. So we're keeping saying that. I mean, so imagine that you are a reviewer and you want to start reviewing a paper, and let's just start by the graphic abstract. If the graphic abstract is self-explanatory and caught your attention and it's appealing to you, wow, that's very important, right? So, and this should be aligned with the abstract and the title. The title should be short. That's very important. Short titles, but appealing titles, and that are able to capture. Sometimes there are titles that are talking about 10% of what's going on in the paper, right? So they should capture what's going on. But I think that these three parts, I pay a lot of attention and spend some time trying to improve that.
And by the way, that's also something where I might assist you, right? Because sometimes if you're too deep in your own data set and you say, well, that part of figure 5C, that's like super important, it's probably not necessary for the graphical abstract. And if you tell AI, look, this is the concept, and Elsevier has a great site on how you should design your graphical abstract. It's very well explained there. If you refer the AI to that website saying, this is my study, this is what I'm talking about, these are the details, how a graphical abstract should look like. Can you give me an idea on how I can make a proper graphical abstract out of that? I think this is also an area where I might be able to assist you to take that step back and look at your manuscript.
Yeah, that's good, particularly as long as we cannot recognize that. That's fantastic. It's very good. It's very good.
And Tobias, any special considerations for graphical abstracts for basic studies? And Virginia, any special considerations for clinical studies? What's the minimum information that you need on a basic study, and what's the minimum information you need on a clinical study?
No, I think that, I mean, it's super important, the graphical abstract, for the reasons that has been stated. So imagine that you are explaining, so it's like drawing something, you are explaining the paper to a friend of yours that is not in the field, and you are like taking a pencil and explaining. It's like, I have this cohort, those are the patients, I'm checking this, I have this outcome, right? It's like trying to do an exercise. It has to be simple. We don't need all the data there. If we have a busy abstract, then you don't like that. It's like it has to be self-explanatory, has to be clear. And I think it's a very difficult part. Most of the time we spend a lot of time drafting the manuscript and the discussion and very choosing the words, and then the last thing that we do is like, okay, a quick abstract, and we put two things together in a graphical abstract. So that's not the message that we're giving you here. Is like, try to really think what are the important details to include there in the abstract. And I think there are no real differences in basic or clinical research. I think this apply to all of the abstract. But yes, Tobias.
I think the key question is, why am I doing this, right? So some people just start with the graphical abstract with the results. But if you don't know the question, you cannot handle the answer, right? So if people need to understand what I've been doing, just tell them what is your underlying question. So you have to start with a question, with a rationale. Why have I done that study? And then come with the results. So I think this is always something. Why have I been doing this? To take readers along, because if you start with the results, nobody can follow. So I think that's a key thing, right? The rationale, then the results, and then a conclusion. These three parts, I think those are the critical things.
Great. I think we learned a lot. Josep, one last minute to summarize. What will be the most important reports for the next year?
Well, first of all, think about JHEP Reports when submitting your original data. Don't be shy. Second, I think that the editorial team will help you as long as your data is appealing. They will help you pointing out what you need to improve to get the paper in. Third, if you have very preliminary data, pilot study that is original or innovative, we are open to understanding your data prior to it's robust enough to be published in a high-end journal. So this first concept, first idea, a pilot study, few patients, but it's appealing enough, it's original enough, we're listening to that. And I think that, I mean, we are who are trying to improve the journal in all aspects, from the decision process that we're trying to streamline and make it very fast for you. But also, I think that you don't lose anything. Submit your research to us, and in 1 month you will have a thorough response. And this will help to improve your paper and probably to get it accepted if you have followed this EASL studio, certainly. So this will help you a lot. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for joining, also to the faculty. And with that, I would like to invite you to join us next week as we move from patient selection to treatment decisions and duration, exploring the challenges of MASLD care. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.